Hi everybody, my name is Miranda, I'm 24 years old, and I'm making this video for Cast on Tours so I could speak about my story of recovery. So my story is very similar to Demi's, which is why I find her so relatable, but she's just relatable in general. You know, anybody who's gone through anything can, watch Demi's videos or listen to her songs or listen even to her interviews, her documentaries, and they can see that she's just this normal girl who has gone through some pretty hard things, but she's made it out of it, and it gives other people hope that these, things are possible, recovery is possible, which it is, and it's important to talk about these issues because there's such a stigma surrounding mental health that people really need to know that, like, these things happen, and there's places that you can go, and there's resources out there, to find and to use to your advantage. So, you don't have to go through it alone, and a lot of people go through similar things that you go through. So she's so inspiring in that sense, and she's so, like, open with, all the struggles that she's gone through that it's just amazing to watch, honestly. I'm a huge fan of hers. I think she's so talented. And, like I said, my story is very similar to hers. I grew up with an alcoholic father. He was never really around. He was in and out of rehab. Very like abusive towards my mom. They got divorced when I was very, very young, when I was like 3. So it was me and my mom for most of the time, but she worked a lot, so I was at my grandparents a lot of the time when she was at work, and my grandfather was like my best friend, so I used to hang out with him a lot. He ended up getting sick with Parkinson's disease when I was like 8 years old, so that was really hard for me to deal with, and he eventually passed away when I was 14. So that was even harder for me to deal with, because he was like my best friend, and he was like my father in a way, because my father was never around and my mom never got remarried, so my grandfather was definitely like my father. So those were some of the more challenging times in my life. And I was also bullied from a very young age, from when I was like 3 years old until high school. They called me like literally every single name in the book. Fat, ugly, whore, this, that, and the third. The normal stuff, which it should not be normal. It's really like horrible how these, bullying is so common these days, and how, like, people, some people don't take it seriously. Now it's finally being taken seriously, which it should be, because it's terrible. Um, so I really internalized a lot of that, and I really thought that these things that they were saying were true. So a lot of my life, I had a lot of anxiety, depression. You know, I was really not a big eater. I never liked eating. It disgusted me. But I did go through a period where I would like binge eat, and I gained a lot of weight. And that's, well, not a lot, but I gained a substantial amount of weight, and that's why they started calling me fat. Because of that. And I, again, like I said, I really internalized that. So once I got into junior high school, probably like 11, 12 years old, um, I went on this strict diet where I only allowed myself to eat maybe one meal a day. I would exercise like for like an hour a day at least, just to burn off that one meal. And then at times you know, when I felt like I ate too much, this happened a little bit later on because I had lost some weight, but then I realized that I wanted to lose more. So the times where I felt like I ate a little bit too much, I would purge it. I started purging. And this purging went on for at least a few years. You know, just because I felt like I still wasn't burning off enough calories with my exercise, and my weight loss kind of went stagnant for a little while. So I felt like I needed to, lose more weight and find other ways to do this. And around the same time, I started cutting myself, because I was just so, like, depressed and so anxious, and the cutting really helped me release some of the stress and some of the, anxiety. And sometimes when you feel this way, it's like it's a real adrenaline rush to see a cut on your body, or to see like blood, or to see, whatever the case is, it really brings like a sense of peace over you. So that's how I think I felt. And I was cutting for about 8 years, almost every single day. And I even cut my ankle open one time by accident. And the doctor said that I was literally like 2 inches away from cutting a major artery, which I didn't even know that there was major arteries in your ankle, but clearly there is. And so that happened, and it was scary. I obviously didn't tell them that I did it. I tried to make something up, which was kind of stupid because there was literally cuts on my arm and all over my ankle. But I was trying to say I ran into a glass table, whatever the case is. So yeah, I had all these things going on simultaneously. Around 12, I started drinking, smoking cigarettes, shoplifting, taking over-the-counter medication because I couldn't get my hands on actual drugs. And then when I got to high school, well, actually right before high school, when I was like 13, actually got my hands on drugs because I started hanging out with high school kids. So I started smoking weed, and then later that year, I was introduced to Vicodin, and from Vicodin, went to Xanax, and from Xanax, went to every other pill basically in the book: Valium, Oxycontin, Percocets, whatever I can get my hands on. I just wanted to try everything at that point, but I didn't want to try anything that was too serious. So I decided that I was going to try ecstasy and cocaine. So I had tried ecstasy, I had tried cocaine. I did ecstasy probably like a handful of times within the next year after that. And, once I tried cocaine, I was doing that every single day for about 6 months. And even after I stopped, I did it a few more times after that, and I just realized it wasn't worth it. I was never really a person that was into like uppers, anyways, but for a while, I was like basically addicted to it. I liked the rush when I combined it with other things because Xanax was my main drug of choice. So combining cocaine and Xanax was a really good feeling, and smoking a little weed on top of that, I was set. Xanax was my main drug of choice. I was probably addicted to Xanax for about a year or two. I was taking it almost every single day, basically. Um, and the reason why I stopped cocaine was because I had taken it and I felt very sick one day. Like, I just took, I guess, a little too much. I felt extremely sick, and I told my mom, and she flushed it down the toilet, which I didn't want her to, and she told me she was going to send me to a rehab um, in the middle of Arizona. And then she was talking to my uncle and my family about it because they had all seen me high and they had known that this was going on. So I decided I was going to cut down. Only enough so that my mom didn't know what was going on, but I vowed to cut down. So I did, and I slowly cut down, until I finally stopped when I was 18 years old. And so everything had stopped by the time I was 18 years old, besides the cutting, and also the purging had stopped as well because I had started getting really bad sore throats. I would get dizzy sometimes after purging, and I had told my mom again, and she was like, "You need to stop, seriously," and she was getting very worried. So I had vowed to cut down again, and I did, and I guess the purging stopped probably around the same time, 18 years old. So this had gone on for years. All of this had gone on for years, 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 years. Um, and one time I even had alcohol poisoning to the point where I was literally a half an hour away from death, and I was having convulsions. I was unconscious for about 12 hours. They had said that, I was probably going to wake up with brain damage, which thank God I didn't. And throughout this whole time, I was severely depressed, severely anxious, getting panic attacks almost every single day. I had went to the hospital for a panic attack on marijuana, which helped me cut down on the marijuana as well. And uh, I had went to the hospital for headaches that was linked to my anxiety and insomnia, and they asked me if I had ever thought of killing myself, and I said, yeah, I have, but I would never do it. and they clearly took that very seriously, and they put me on a psychiatric hold for 24 hours until I could see a therapist, and they got me a psychologist, and I went to therapy for about a year. Um, and then I also, around the time when I was about 18 or 19, no, actually 19 or 20, I had went to anger management because even though my depression had subsided by that time and I wasn't doing drugs, I was still drinking somewhat heavily and cutting, and I wasn't purging, but I was drinking, I was cutting, and I had very bad anger issues and anxiety issues. Not so much depression anymore. So I went to anger management. That helped a little bit, and it helped me to, cut down on my drinking. I even quit cigarettes around the time I was 18 as well. Um, and cutting, the last time that I cut was when I was 19. Um, and Since then, I have had some issues with self-harm. It's probably been a year since I scratched myself. Because after I stopped cutting, I did scratch myself with my fingernails every time I got like angry or something. So it's been about a year since I last did that. But last time I actually cut, I was very drunk, and me and my mom got into an argument, and I ran to the kitchen, I grabbed a knife, and I cut open my wrist, and I thought that I was literally gonna have to get stitches, which I didn't, thank God. But if that was a sharper knife, I would have probably had to have gotten stitches, or maybe even cut an artery or something open. So I stopped. Um, Stopped doing that at least. And that was really hard for me because that was one of the main things that kept me, sane, I would say, which it didn't, but I thought at the time that that was one of the main things that like I really needed in my life, because it was a part of me for so long. So it's been 5 years since I actually cut, been 1 year since I scratched myself. It's been 6 years since I've taken drugs or have smoked a cigarette or anything like that. That's just to add that in there. I'm proud of like not smoking cigarettes anymore. Um, but yeah, I mean, I drink occasionally, but I've cut down a lot, and I would not say it's an issue anymore. Um, and I did get back into smoking weed for a little while, but I've been clean of that for almost 9 months. So I'm proud of myself for that as well. And my anxiety, my anger issues have gotten better, but of course it's a daily struggle. It's always a daily struggle. And my depression, like I said, has gotten a lot better from when I was younger. I just didn't care when I was younger. I was so depressed and so anxious, but mainly depressed, and I just didn't care. I never wanted to die, I guess, but at some points I was like, whatever, I would play these games where I would just run across the street when cars were coming, or just stand in the middle of the street until a car was literally about to hit me, and then I would move out of the way. Kind of playing like a Russian roulette with my life, I guess. And my ex-boyfriend, the boyfriend that I had at the time, even said like he was scared. He was scared for me. There was this one time where I took 2 Xanaxes and I smoked and I drank a ton of alcohol and I was doing coke, and I was literally about to finish like a whole bag of coke, like a huge bag of coke by myself. And he said that he had to hide the rest of the alcohol and the rest of the coke from me. Otherwise, I would have probably overdosed. Like I just didn't care, and I was just running wild. Um, because I really thought that I was worthless, and I thought that nobody cared about me, nobody would miss me. Um, and it was a really dark time, Um, but yeah, I mean, like I said, I try to keep my drinking under control. I don't, like I said, I don't cut, I don't scratch anymore. Sometimes I do punch myself or punch other things. I've been trying to keep that under control as well, because that is a form of self-harm, and that could lead to other things, but from where I was until where I am right now, especially with like depression and anxiety and anger issues and stuff like that, I take it day by day, and I've been trying my best to keep everything under control. Um, but it's hard sometimes, yeah. And some days are better than others, but it does get easier. Improvements are made every single day, and it gets easier, whether you like realize it in the moment or not. When you look back on it 5 years ago how I was, or 6 years ago how I was when I stopped doing drugs, or when I stopped cutting, or even a year ago when I stopped scratching myself, and when I had my very last pull of a cigarette, because I was still taking a few pulls here and there even after I stopped smoking cigarettes. I would take like one or two pulls like every whatever. But the past year I haven't smoked any cigarettes, haven't scratched myself, haven't smoked weed, so I just feel like it's definitely possible. And everybody, who is going through something, I hope that you all, find your way. And you know these stories are real, and it is a hard road, but as long as you have support around you and you ask for help, it makes everything much better, and it gets easier basically. So that's my story, and I'm just so grateful to be where I am today. I had a best friend who passed away almost 4 years ago from a heroin overdose, and at one point, me and her were doing this same exact thing. At one point, I was actually even worse than her. So I'm so grateful that my life changed for the better. Unfortunately, I'm sad, obviously, that hers did not change for the better, and it went on a downward spiral. But I see it as a good thing that I'm here and I'm alive and I'm not in jail and I'm not in rehab and I'm not dead, and it feels amazing to know that I'm here and I made it and I found my strength, and I'm much happier for it, So, like I said, it's still a struggle, but day by day, we'll get there. So thank you for letting me share my story, and I would be honored to speak at Demi's concert. That would be literally the highlight of my entire life. So thank you, and hope to see you soon. Bye.